I was on a business trip and decided to video call my grandson. When he stepped away from the screen for a moment, my blood ran cold when I saw my daughter-in-law in my son's bed with a strange man. The next day, I flew back without telling anyone and invited her parents over, telling them it was a surprise. When they opened the door, "I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has traveled." I opened my eyes in the cold hotel room in Chicago, where the faint morning light was filtering through the thin curtains. The smell of coffee from the hallway mixed with the crisp air from the AC, waking me up completely. In front of me, on the small wooden table next to the bed, was a thick stack of documents, numbers, charts, and contracts I had spent months preparing for today's meeting. It was a huge opportunity, not just for me, but for the company belonging to my son, Alex, the son I have dedicated my entire life to supporting. I smoothed down my graying hair, took a deep breath, and tried to calm my nerves before facing such an important day. The meeting went off without a hitch, better than I could have ever hoped. The handshakes, the satisfied smiles from the partners, and the confident nod from the other company's director put my heart at ease. Walking out of the conference room, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I decided to give myself a break and reward myself with a quiet moment. My feet led me to a small coffee shop tucked away in a narrow alley, where the smell of a freshly brewed spiced coffee, thick with cinnamon and brown sugar, filled the air. I sat down at a worn wooden table. Sunlight streamed through a small window, lighting up the scratches on the tabletop, creating patterns of light and shadow that reminded me of my own life, sometimes bright, sometimes full of darkness. With the steaming cup of coffee in my hand, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the family group chat messages I had missed during the busy day. The cheerful texts and laughing photos of my grandson Michael warmed my heart. Then my eyes landed on a picture Michael had sent the night before. The boy, just 6 years old, had drawn a picture of their family of 3 with colorful crayons. In the drawing, Alex was tall and strong, standing straight like a sturdy pine tree. Isabel, my daughter-in-law, had long curly hair and a radiant smile. And in the center was Michael, a small circle with a happy face, colored a bright yellow. Seeing the drawing, I smiled without even realizing it, a wave of happiness swelling in my chest. How long had it been since I'd last seen the boy? I hit the video call button, eager to see his bright smile. The phone screen lit up, and Michael's round face appeared, his eyes twinkling like 2 little stars. "Grandma!" he shouted, his clear voice echoing from the speaker. "I got an A in math today." My grandson's joy was like a cool breeze on my tired heart. I let out a proud laugh. "That's my boy! Tell me, what did your teacher say?" Michael chattered on excitedly, each word a precious jewel that made me wish I could hug him right then and there. He ran around the room with the phone in his hand, showing me all the new toys Alex had bought him before his work trip. A remote control car, a spaceship-shaped Lego set, and even a silver robot that gleamed in the light. Seeing him so happy, all the exhaustion from the day just melted away. But then, for a fleeting moment, Isabel appeared on camera. Her curly hair was a mess, and her thin robe fluttered as she crossed the living room. She glanced at the screen, a look of surprise on her face, and then quickly slammed the bedroom door shut behind her. A pang of unease shot through my chest, like an icy gust of wind on a sunny day. I told myself she probably just woke up. Maybe she was tired after taking care of Michael all day. Isabel had always been a dedicated mother, or at least that's what I always wanted to believe. I pushed the thought away, refusing to let any doubts ruin this happy moment with my grandson. "Hang on a sec, Grandma. I'm gonna go get my newest robot to show you," Michael yelled enthusiastically, setting the phone down on the dining room table. The camera was accidentally pointed toward the bedroom, where the door Isabel had just shut without locking was now slightly ajar. I was about to tell the boy to come back, but the scene that appeared before my eyes left me frozen. Isabel, still in that sheer nightgown, was lying in bed next to a strange man. He was shirtless, his muscular chest covered in a tangled web of tattoos, like a chaotic ink drawing on his skin. The man pulled her close, whispered something in her ear, and she let out a little giggle, a sound I had never heard from my daughter-in-law before. Then they kissed, a passionate, shameless kiss, right there in the bed where my son Alex slept every night. I felt my heart stop. The phone felt incredibly heavy in my trembling hand. Without thinking, I moved it closer, as if to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But no, the scene was too clear, too cruel. Isabel, the daughter-in-law I had loved like my own daughter, was cheating on my son in the very house he had built with his own hard work. I wanted to scream, to smash the phone, but my throat closed up and I couldn't make a sound. "Isn't he cool, Grandma?" Michael's clear, innocent voice cut through the nightmare, pulling me back. The boy was back, holding the shiny robot up to the camera, his eyes full of excitement. I tried to force a smile, but my lips felt stiff and my voice came out choked. "He's very cool, sweetheart." I don't even know what I said, only that I had to keep my voice from breaking. Michael kept talking excitedly about his robot, but I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was spinning, the image of Isabel and that man a knife twisting in my heart. The call ended. The phone screen went black, reflecting my shattered expression. I looked down at my spiced coffee, which had been piping hot just minutes ago and was now stone cold. The coffee shop was still bustling with people and noise, but I felt isolated in a silent void, with nothing left but the pounding of my heart and the pain spreading through my chest. A few hours later, I was sitting by the window on a flight from Chicago to Denver, my eyes fixed on the white clouds floating outside. But my mind wasn't there, on that plane crossing the sky. It was drifting back to years long past, to memories both sweet and painful that now felt like sharp blades cutting me from the inside. I closed my eyes, trying to push them away, but the past came rushing back more vividly than ever. I remembered the day my husband John left for good. It was an afternoon of torrential rain in Denver when I got the call from the hospital. The voice on the other end informed me coldly that John's truck had crashed into a bridge in the middle of the storm and that he hadn't survived. At that moment, Alex was only 10 years old, and I, a young wife, barely in my 30s, suddenly became a widow. My world fell apart. I stood frozen in the doorway of our house, holding a sobbing Alex in my arms, the rain mixing with my tears. "Mom, where's Dad? Is he coming back for me?" the boy asked, his voice trembling. I couldn't answer him. I just held him tighter, as if letting go meant I might lose him too. From then on, it was just Alex and me, leaning on each other. I worked hard to keep the small business John left behind afloat, a pottery workshop where I had previously only helped my husband with the books. Now, I had to learn how to negotiate with clients, run around trying to get loans, and spend entire nights calculating every single expense. There were nights when, long after the whole neighborhood was asleep, I was still under a dim light, hunched over my desk, going over numbers one by one. Alex, though just a boy, would often sit quietly beside me, doing his homework and helping me add and subtract the figures on the invoices. "Mom, did I do it right?" he'd ask, his eyes bright even as his eyelids grew heavy. Looking at him, I would tell myself I couldn't give up. For him, I had to stay strong. The day Alex got his acceptance letter to study civil engineering at the university, I cried. Not from sadness, but from pride. But that joy was quickly replaced by worry. The tuition was a crushing burden for a single mother like me. I knocked on every family member's door, swallowing my pride to ask for loans, even though it hurt deeply. "Carol, are you sure you can pay this back? This money is for my son to study abroad," one cousin said, her eyes full of doubt. I gritted my teeth and nodded, though I was aching inside. Alex knew his mother was struggling, which is why he never complained. He studied and worked at a construction site, bringing home just a few dollars, but they meant the world. "Mom, here's a little something for this month. Go buy yourself something nice to eat," he'd say, his voice still innocent, though his eyes had already aged beyond his years. I took the money from his hands as tears streamed silently down my face. On his graduation day, I stood in the crowd of parents, clapping until my palms stung, as my son walked across the stage to receive his engineering degree with honors. He had made it. He had overcome every obstacle life had thrown at us. He later found a good job at a large construction firm, slowly making a name for himself. Seeing my son become a man, I felt that all my sacrifices had been worth it. But deep down, I was still afraid that one day his happiness would be snatched away, just as fate had snatched John from me. Then Isabel came along. The first time Alex brought her home, I was captivated by her sweet smile and her respectful way of speaking. Isabel was young, beautiful, with long, curly hair and bright eyes that seemed to speak for themselves. "Mom, this is Isabel. I want you to meet her," Alex said, a happiness in his eyes I hadn't seen since John died. I took Isabel's hand, feeling the warmth of her soft skin, and I believed my son had found his safe harbor. "It's so nice to meet you, ma'am. Alex has told me so much about you. I admire you a lot," she said, her voice sincere. I smiled, filled with hope. Maybe, I thought, this was the beginning of the happy family I had always dreamed of for my son. The wedding was held in a small, old church in Denver. It poured rain that day, but Alex and Isabel's smiles shone brighter than the sun. I sat in the front row, watching my son walk his bride down the aisle, and my heart overflowed with joy. "Mom, today is the happiest day of my life," Alex whispered to me when he hugged me after the ceremony. I squeezed his shoulders tightly, tears running down my cheeks. "As long as you're happy, I'm at peace," I answered, my voice choked with emotion. The day Michael was born, I was the first one to take the baby from the nurse's arms. Looking at his tiny face, his eyes squeezed shut and his little hand balled into a fist, I felt my heart melt. "This is Grandma's boy," I whispered, holding Michael against my chest, feeling the warmth of a new life. Alex stood beside me, his gaze full of tenderness for his wife and son. "Mom, I want to name him Michael, after Grandpa," he said. I nodded and the tears fell again. That name was like a thread connecting the past to the present, linking the pain of loss with the hope of a new beginning. In the early years, Alex's family truly was a picture-perfect scene. On weekends, they would often drive to my house, bringing laughter and cheerful conversation with them. I would make my special pot roast, everyone's favorite dish, and we would sit around the table together enjoying the rich flavor. Michael loved to sit on my lap, eating while telling me stories from school. "Grandma, I built a huge Lego house today," he'd boast, his eyes shining. Alex and Isabel would sit across from us, holding hands, looking at each other with love. Seeing them, I thought I had fulfilled my mission as a mother and a grandmother. But then, the cracks began to appear, silent as water seeping through stone. Isabel started coming home late, using meetings or parties with friends as an excuse. Once I happened to see a strange message on her phone, which she had left on my table. "Are you free today? I miss you," the text read, from an unknown name. I was startled, but I quickly tried to calm myself down. It's probably just someone bothering her. Isabel is a good girl. She wouldn't do anything wrong. I didn't dare say anything to Alex, afraid of shattering my son's happiness, until one night I overheard them arguing. I had gone over to their house to look after Michael. Isabel was crying her eyes out, her voice full of reproach. "You only ever think about your work. You're gone for weeks at a time, leaving your wife and son at home alone. Do you have any idea how lonely I am?" Alex just stood there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes tired. "Isabel, everything I do is for our family. You want me to quit my job? Then how are we going to live?" he answered, his voice hoarse. I was standing behind the door, my heart breaking with every word. I wanted to go in, to say something to calm things down, but in the end, I turned and left in silence. I was afraid that if I interfered, I would only make everything worse. The announcement that the plane was preparing for landing snapped me back to reality. I opened my eyes and saw the sky outside the window had turned a sunset orange. Inside me, a storm was raging. The memories that were once sweet were now nothing but sharp knives digging into my heart. The image of Isabel with that man flashed in my mind again, so clearly that I wanted to scream to make it go away. I clenched my fists, feeling my nails dig into my palms, but the physical pain couldn't cover up the ache in my soul. When the plane touched down, I grabbed my suitcase from the carousel and took a deep breath of the familiar Denver air. The smell of hot dogs from a street vendor, the laughter of children playing, it was all familiar, but nothing could comfort me. I knew it was time to face the cruel truth. I walked out of the Denver airport, the hot midday sun hitting my eyes. I flagged down a cab and gave the driver my address in a hoarse voice. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind smile, asked, "Just getting back from a trip? You look really tired." I just nodded and managed a weak smile, not wanting to let anyone touch the pain raging inside me. Sitting in the car, I watched the familiar streets of Denver go by. The hot dog stands on the sidewalk were still smoking, the smell filling the morning air. Kids with backpacks were running to school, their clear laughter like a wordless melody. That scene used to make me smile, to feel a sense of calm. But today, it just squeezed my heart. All that peace seemed like a fragile veneer hiding the deep cracks in my family. I didn't go straight to Alex's house. Instead, I took out my phone, took a deep breath to keep my voice steady, and dialed the number for Mary and Joe, Isabel's parents. The phone rang several times before Mary's voice answered, warm as always. "Carol, how are you? It's been so long since we've heard from you." I forced a smile, even though I knew she couldn't see it. "I'm doing well, Mary. I just got back to Denver and wanted to invite you both to lunch at Alex's house tomorrow. There's an important matter about Michael's future I need to discuss with you." I tried to sound natural, but every word felt like a stone on my tongue. Mary happily accepted. "Oh, if it's about Michael, of course we'll be there." "Will you be there, Carol? Do you want us to bring anything?" I shook my head, though she couldn't see me, and replied, "No need. Just your being there is enough." Joe, who was nearby, chimed in with a hint of surprise. "Carol, how come you're back without telling anyone? Did something urgent happen?" I cleared my throat, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. It was all very sudden. I didn't have time to let anyone know. "Oh, and please don't say anything to Isabel. I want to surprise her." Joe let out a laugh. "Haha, you always like to keep us in suspense. All right, it'll be our little secret." I hung up, my heart heavy. A secret? I was the one holding a terrible secret, and tomorrow it would all come out in front of everyone. When I got home, I pushed my suitcase into a corner without even opening it. I changed into a simple cotton dress, the one I usually wore around the house, but the tightness in my chest wouldn't go away. I sat down on the old armchair in the living room where John and I used to spend hours talking about our dreams. My fingers traced my rosary, each bead sliding smoothly, but it brought me no comfort. My mind was a chaotic mess, my thoughts clashing like broken glass. How could I face Isabel? How could I tell Alex about this betrayal? And most importantly, how could I protect Michael, my beloved grandson, from the wounds we adults were about to inflict? As evening fell and the house was bathed in the golden light of sunset, my phone rang. Alex's name appeared on the screen, and I felt a knot form in my chest. I answered, trying my best to sound normal. "Mom," my son said, his voice cheerful and full of excitement like a kid who just accomplished something great. "I finished up work early. I'm flying back tomorrow. I want to surprise Isabel. Plus, I just signed the papers for a new car to give her for our anniversary." His words were like a dagger straight to my heart. I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white, feeling the floor crumble beneath me. Alex, my son, was overflowing with happiness, planning a gift to make his wife happy, while his wife... I bit my lip to keep my voice from breaking. "Yes, that's wonderful, honey. Isabel... she'll certainly be in for a big surprise." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding like a war drum. I didn't want Alex to come back to face such a bitter surprise. I wanted to protect him, to shield him as I had for decades. But then, an idea sparked in my mind, cold and clear. Alex's sudden return would be the irrefutable proof. If I wanted the truth to come out, if I wanted Mary and Joe to witness what their daughter had done, this was the chance. I needed them to be there, to see with their own eyes the cruel reality I had already seen through a phone screen. That night, I sat alone in the silent kitchen, The dim yellow light illuminated the table, where I had meticulously cleaned every glass, rearranging the chairs over and over again as a way to keep my mind in order. I picked up a crystal glass, caressed it, feeling the coldness under my fingertips. That glass had been a wedding gift from a dear friend, and now it was part of my family's memory. But in that moment, everything felt shattered. I thought about Mary and Joe, about the pride they showed when they talked about Isabel. Our daughter is our pride and joy, Carol. She always knows how to make others happy, Mary used to say, her eyes shining. Tomorrow, when everything came to light, how would they feel? Would they blame me for dragging them into this painful drama? I got up and went out to the porch, where the red bougainvillea swayed in the night breeze. The cool Denver air enveloped me, but it couldn't soothe the pain in my chest. I looked up at the starry sky and said a prayer, though I wasn't even sure what I was asking for. Maybe I was asking for the strength to face the next day, to protect Alex and Michael from the storm that was coming. The next morning, I woke up early and prepared a simple but thoughtful lunch. Green chicken enchiladas, rice with pinto beans, and a flan that Michael loved so much. I wanted everything to seem normal, like a cozy family meal, so no one would suspect a thing. But deep down, I knew it would be a day impossible to forget. I had just left my house, pulling a small suitcase with some clothes, when I ran right into Alex at the end of the street. My son, tall and strong, was beaming, holding a bouquet of red roses in one arm and a folder with car contracts in the other. "Mom," he called out, his voice full of joy. "I caught an early flight. Did you just get back too? I was going to stop by your place after seeing Isabel." Seeing Alex's smile, the fresh bouquet in his hands, I felt my heart clench. I wanted to scream, to stop him, to tell him not to go in, not to set foot in that house. But I stood frozen, my legs as heavy as stone, watching my son walk excitedly toward his home. I followed him, step by step, as if I were dragging a massive boulder behind me. I stopped in front of the familiar wooden door of Alex's house, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. Beside me stood Alex, his face lit up, a bouquet of roses in one arm, and the folder of contracts held tightly in the other, ready to give to Isabel as an anniversary gift. Behind us were Mary and Joe, Isabel's parents, chatting animatedly, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Mary turned to me with her usual warm smile. "Isabel is probably going to cry with joy when she sees Alex came back as a surprise, right, Carol?" I just pressed my lips together, nodding slightly, unable to say a word. How could I explain to her that this surprise wouldn't bring joy, but would be a dagger through all of our hearts? My hands trembled as I lifted my finger to ring the doorbell. Every second of waiting felt like an eternity. From inside, we could hear laughter mixed with playful footsteps, accompanied by soft music coming from a speaker. I recognized the song, an old romantic ballad that Alex used to say was Isabel's favorite. That sound, which once symbolized their love, now just sent shivers down my spine. I looked at Alex and saw he was still smiling, radiant, without the slightest suspicion. My heart sank. I wanted to stop him, to tell him to walk away, but I knew this truth couldn't be hidden forever. The door swung open without warning. Isabel stood there, her curly hair tangled, wrapped in nothing but a thin towel. Beside her, Dylan, the man I had seen on the video call days before, was also wearing just a towel, his muscular, tattooed chest on full display. They were both laughing, playfully pushing each other like it was an innocent game. Perhaps they thought it was the lunch delivery they had ordered, but when their eyes met the 4 stunned faces at the door, mine, Alex's, Mary's, and Joe's, the smiles vanished from their faces, like candles blown out by an icy wind. Alex was paralyzed. The bouquet of red roses slipped from his hand, the delicate petals scattering across the floor. The folder with the car contract papers also fell, the pages fluttering down and mixing with the crushed petals. His eyes, which moments before had been shining with happiness, were now empty, as if his entire soul had just left his body. I watched him, and I felt my own heart breaking into pieces. Mary covered her mouth, letting out a choked sob, her eyes wide with horror. Joe took a step back, his hands trembling, murmuring, "My God, my daughter. How could this happen?" Isabel stumbled backward, clinging tightly to Dylan's arm as if for support. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. "Alex, it's not what you think." Her voice was weak, broken, as if she didn't even believe her own words. Dylan tried to back away, his eyes darting nervously, but Isabel held on tight, as if letting go would mean collapsing completely. Alex lunged forward, furiously knocking Dylan's hand off Isabel's shoulder and roaring, his voice like thunder. "Shut up! I don't want to hear another one of your lies." I had never seen my son like this. His eyes were bloodshot, the veins in his neck were bulging, and his whole body was shaking with rage and pain. The air in the room grew thick, as if all the oxygen had vanished. I stood in the doorway, unable to go in, unable to leave. Before me, my family's drama was unfolding. My son with the bouquet of love shattered at his feet, confronting his cheating wife and her shameless lover. I wanted to scream, to run over and slap Isabel, to pull Alex out of there, but my legs were rooted to the spot. All I could do was stand there, watching my son face the cruel truth that I had known all along. Mary burst into tears, her sobs tearing through the silence of the room. "Isabel, how could you do this? How dare you treat Alex, treat Michael like this?" she cried, her voice broken with pain. Joe held her hand, trying to keep her steady, but he was shaking too. She was our pride and joy. "Why, Carol?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading, as if I could give him an answer that would ease his pain. But I just shook my head, my throat too tight to speak. Isabel fell to her knees, grabbing onto Alex's legs, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Alex, please listen to me. It was just a mistake. I didn't want this. I love you. I love Michael." She cried, but her voice no longer had the power to convince anyone. Dylan stood there, arms crossed, a smirk on his face, his eyes cold, like a spectator enjoying a play. He said nothing, but his arrogance made my blood boil. I wanted to throw him out of the house that very second. Alex looked down at Isabel, his eyes red and bloodshot. I saw him clench his fists, his knuckles white with the force of it, holding back the rage that was consuming him. He took a deep breath and said word by word, his voice icy, "We're getting a divorce, and I'm getting full custody of Michael." His words rang out, firm, unforgiving, like a hammer blow that shattered Isabel's last shred of hope. She looked up, her eyes wide with panic, stammering, "No, no, Alex, you can't do this to me. Michael is our son. You can't take my boy from me." Alex stood his ground, pointing a finger at her, his gaze burning. "Then explain it to me. What is all this?" His voice trembled, not with fear, but with the pain of betrayal tearing his heart apart. I looked at my son, the strong man I had raised, now like an oak tree battered by a storm, staggering but still standing. I wanted to run and hug him, to ease some of his suffering, but I was frozen, my feet glued to the floor. Isabel shrank back, her face as white as a sheet, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to hold herself together. "Alex, she stammered, the words nonsensical in her panic. "It was just a mistake. You have to believe me." Her voice sounded weak, like a child caught in a lie trying to make excuses. But those words only fueled Alex's fury. "Believe you?" "Believe what?" "That you cheated on me in my own house," he roared, stepping toward her, his eyes blazing. All the while, Dylan just stood there, arms crossed, smirking. He was like a spectator enjoying the disaster, with no regard for the damage he had caused. His shamelessness made my blood boil, but I held back. I knew Alex needed me now more than ever. Mary couldn't take it anymore. She rushed toward Isabel, grabbing her hand, tears streaming down her grief-stricken face. "Isabel, how could you do something so shameful? What kind of upbringing did we give you?" Her voice trembled, caught between pain and fury. Joe put his arm around his wife and pulled her away, his gaze fixed on the floor, unable to look at me or Alex. The shame and disappointment were plain on his face, as if he himself were carrying the same wound we were. Alex screamed. his voice that of a man wounded to his very core. A mistake? You still have the nerve to call it a mistake. He slammed the folder with the car contract onto the table, the papers scattering across the floor, mixing with the crushed rose petals. Today, I came back today to give you this car, to celebrate our wedding anniversary. And this is the gift you give me? His voice broke, each word like a stab to his own heart. I stood behind Alex, feeling my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. I wanted to say something to comfort my son, but my throat closed up and I couldn't get a single word out. I took a step forward, my voice icy but firm. Isabel, you betrayed my son. You betrayed my grandson right here in this house that was built with the sweat of his brow. My words were as sharp as blades, but inside I was shaking. I thought of Michael, of his innocent smile, and my soul tore apart imagining him having to grow up in a broken home. Isabel burst into tears, kneeling before Alex and desperately hugging his legs. Honey, please forgive me. I don't want to lose this family. I don't want to lose you or Michael. She sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down her cheeks, but there was no sincerity left in her eyes. I watched her with a heavy heart. This daughter-in-law, whom I had once loved like a daughter, now seemed like a complete stranger. Then Dylan stepped forward, put an arm around Isabel and smirked. Come on, she was just having a little fun. What's the big deal? He said with a shameless tone, as if he were mocking all of us. Alex spun around, fists clenched, his gaze burning into Dylan. Get out of here right now, he roared, pointing to the door. Dylan shrugged, grabbed his jacket from the sofa, and walked out without an apology, without a shred of remorse. Alex turned back to Isabel, his eyes cold, without a trace of warmth. It's over, he said in a glacial tone. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm raising Michael by myself. Those words were like the final blow, destroying the last remnants of their marriage. Isabel jumped to her feet in a panic, running after Dylan and trying to grab him with trembling hands, as if she wanted to stop him from saying anything more. Shut up, Dylan. Don't say such stupid things, she screamed, her voice cracking with fear as tears rolled down her pale face. But Dylan shoved her away with contempt, a look of provocation and mockery in his eyes. A mistake, you say? What about the boy, Michael? Is he a mistake too, Isabel? He let out a cold, cruel laugh, as if he was enjoying the disaster he had just created. Those words hit like a bolt of lightning. Mary, Isabel's mother, collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest as a choked sob escaped her throat. Joe, beside her, was frozen, his eyes wide with shock, unable to speak. I looked at them, feeling my own heart bleed for them. But my eyes immediately went to Alex, my son, who was barely standing, his whole body trembling. He stared at Dylan, then at Isabel, and his voice came out in a choked whisper. What? What did you just say? Isabel collapsed to her knees, hugging Alex's legs, crying desperately, No, Alex, don't listen to him. I love you. Michael is your son. She cried, but her voice sounded weak, as if she didn't even believe her own words. Dylan lifted his chin, that mocking smirk still on his face. Yours? Then why does he look like a carbon copy of me? He walked toward Alex, his gaze loaded with provocation. Take a good look at the boy's eyes, Alex. Look at his nose, his chin. Who do you think he looks more like? Alex clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white, as if trying to contain the rage burning inside him. He roared, his voice a mixture of pain and fury. I don't believe you! I'm taking Michael for a DNA test. His words echoed, firm but trembling, like an oath to protect the last spark of faith he had left. The next morning, Denver woke up under a blanket of gray fog, as if the entire city shared our pain. I was in the passenger seat as Alex drove, my tired eyes staring out the window, where dewdrops blurred the familiar scenery. Michael was in the back seat, hugging his favorite brown teddy bear tightly, and asked in his innocent voice, Dad, why are we going to the hospital? I'm not sick. His naive words were like an invisible knife stabbing me in the heart. I glanced at Alex and saw him gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He stroked Michael's head and tried to smile. It's nothing, son. It's just a checkup to make sure you're okay. His voice was hoarse, as if every word had to push through a wall of pain. I took Michael's small hand, feeling the warmth of his little fingers. My chest felt tight like a stone was crushing me. I wanted to tell the boy that everything was going to be okay, that his grandma would always be with him. But I was afraid those words would be a lie. The truth we were about to face could destroy everything. Not just Alex's happiness, but Michael's innocent world as well. I looked at my grandson, at his bright eyes, and I wondered, how could I protect him from this storm? At the hospital, the cold air in the white hallways made my skin crawl. We were at the front desk, where Alex had to sign a stack of papers. But his hands were shaking so much that he dropped the pen, and it rolled across the counter. I looked at my son, my heart aching. This strong man, who had overcome so many challenges in his life, now looked as fragile as a leaf in the wind. I silently picked up the pen, placed it back in his hand, and whispered, "It's okay, son. I'm right here." Alex nodded, but his gaze was empty, as if his soul had vanished. When the nurse came to draw blood, Michael scrunched up his face, his big eyes welling with tears. "Grandma, I'm scared of the needle," he whispered, clinging to my clothes. I held him tight, rubbing his back. "It's okay, brave boy. It'll just feel like a little pinch, and afterward, Grandma will buy you some ice cream." Michael nodded, biting his lip to be strong, but when the needle pricked his skin, he burst into tears. I squeezed his hand, trying to give him some of my courage, even though I was trembling myself. I looked over at Alex. He was sitting in a corner of the waiting room, his head in his hands. His broad shoulders were shaking as if he was fighting to hold back sobs. I wanted to run to him to tell him that no matter the result, we would still be a family, but I couldn't let go of Michael. The wait for the results felt like an eternity, like a century. We sat in the waiting room, no one saying a word. The ticking of the clock on the wall was a dry, sharp sound, each second like a stab to the heart. Michael, tired of waiting, had fallen asleep on my lap, his head resting on my shoulder, his breathing calm. I gently stroked his soft hair, my soul torn apart. I thought about the days past, when I held him in my arms for the first time, when he called me Grandma Carol with so much love. After today, would everything still be the same? Would I ever be able to hear him call my name without it hurting? Finally, the doctor came in, his face full of sorrow. He was holding a white envelope and handed it to Alex. "Here are the results. Mr. Alvarez," he said in a grave voice, as if he knew that what he was delivering would change everything. Alex took the paper with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the written lines over and over. I stood up and walked over to him, my heart racing. I looked over his shoulder, and there it was, in clear, bold letters. The analysis indicates that the alleged father and the child have no biological relationship. The world around me stopped. Alex broke down, deep, wrenching sobs of a shattered man. He collapsed into the chair, the paper slipping from his hands and falling to the floor. "No, it can't be," he murmured, his voice in pieces. I stood there motionless, feeling my own heart tear apart. Tears streamed down my face, but I held them back because Michael was still asleep in my arms. The boy woke up startled, clinging to my shirt and asking in a shaky voice, "Grandma, what's wrong with Dad? Why is he crying?" I hugged him tight, pulling Alex into the hug as well, my eyes full of tears, but my voice firm. "It's okay, honey. No matter what, Michael will always be his grandma's grandson. We will never leave him alone." It was the only thing I could say, though deep down, I knew it wasn't enough to heal Alex's pain. He took Michael into his arms, holding him tightly, as if afraid that if he let go he would lose him forever. "My son," he whispered, his voice cracking. "No matter what, you will always be my son." I looked at Alex and saw an abyss of despair in his eyes, but also a flicker of determination. He stood up, wiped his tears, and said in a hoarse voice, "Mom, I'm not going to let Isabel or Dylan take Michael from me. I'll do whatever it takes to keep him." I nodded, taking his hand, feeling the strength my son still had left. "I know, Alex. We'll protect Michael together, I replied, though deep down I was scared. Scared that this truth would change everything, that it would erase the smile from the boy's face, that it would destroy the family I had worked so hard to build. We left the hospital and walked through the sunny streets of Denver. But the sun couldn't warm my heart. Michael took my hand and started chattering excitedly about his teddy bear, completely unaware that his world had just been turned upside down. Alex walked beside us, his gaze distant, but his hand was gripping Michael's tightly like a silent promise. Just then Alex's phone rang. Isabel's name flashed on the screen. I glanced at him, saw him hesitate, and then answer on speakerphone. Isabel's broken voice burst through, choked with sobs. "Alex, where are you? Please don't leave us. Give me one last chance." Her voice sounded weak without a hint of sincerity. Alex gripped the phone, his expression darkening, and I knew a new battle was about to begin. A week after the shock of the DNA test, I found myself standing in front of the Denver City Courthouse, my heart as heavy as a stone. The morning light shone brightly on the familiar cobblestone streets, but it couldn't dispel the chill that had settled in my chest. I walked beside Alex, my son, who now wore a cold, emotionless expression, as if he had locked all his pain deep inside himself. Michael, my little grandson, had been sent to Mrs. Rose's house, our lifelong neighbor, to keep him away from the suffocating atmosphere of this day. I didn't want the boy to witness what was about to happen, a hearing that would not only end a marriage, but could also decide his future. The courtroom was small, the air thick with the smell of old wood and the curious stares of strangers sitting on the back benches. I sat down right behind Alex, my hands instinctively clutching my rosary, letting each smooth bead slide through my fingers as if it could keep my mind calm. Alex sat straight in the front row, a stack of files his lawyer had prepared laid out before him. I looked at my son's back, and though his broad shoulders were still firm, I knew that inside he was falling apart. I wanted to put my hand on his shoulder, to tell him his mother would always be there, but I just prayed silently, asking God to give us the strength to get through this day. The courtroom door opened, and Isabel walked in. She was wearing a simple black dress, her face carefully made up, but the powder couldn't hide her swollen eyes or her defeated expression. She kept her head down, avoiding our gaze, and walked to her seat with the posture of someone who already knows they've lost. Dylan, the man who had destroyed our lives, was nowhere to be seen. I heard he had left Denver right after that fateful day, without a goodbye, without taking any responsibility for Michael. His cowardice filled me with contempt, but at the same time, it brought me a small sense of relief. At least he wouldn't be here to make things more complicated. The judge, a middle-aged man with a deep, serious voice, began the hearing. When he asked Alex for his petition, my son stood up, his tone firm, though heavy with pain. "I am requesting a divorce and full custody of Michael Alvarez." His words rang out clear and determined, but I saw him clench his fists, as if he needed all his strength to keep his voice from shaking. I looked at Isabel, who immediately burst into loud, dramatic sobs, putting on a show. "No, my son needs his mother. I can't live without him," she cried, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her cheeks. But all I saw in those tears was falsehood. This woman had betrayed my son, had hidden the truth about Michael, and now she dared to claim the right to be a mother. Alex's lawyer, a middle-aged woman with a sharp gaze, stood up and presented the evidence, one piece at a time. She placed the DNA test result in front of the judge, with the chilling sentence, "No biological relationship exists." Then she showed the screenshots from the video call I had accidentally witnessed, taken from my phone, which exposed Isabel and Dylan in an undeniable situation. Finally, she presented financial statements, proving that Isabel had no job and had been completely dependent on Alex for all those years. Each piece of evidence was like a hammer blow, shattering any excuse Isabel might have had. She just sat there, head bowed, not daring to look up, murmuring faintly, I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to keep this family together." I looked at Isabel, my heart torn between anger and pity. I had loved her like a daughter, had thought she would be Alex's haven of happiness. But now, all I saw was a woman who had destroyed everything with her own hands. I thought of Michael, of his innocent smile, and my chest tightened. How could she stand here and claim custody of a son she had deceived since the day he was born? The judge banged his gavel, his voice echoing, serious but with a hint of compassion. Based on the evidence presented, the court rules that Mr. Alex Alvarez is granted full custody of the child. Mrs. Carol Alvarez, as the paternal grandmother, will serve as a co-guardian with Mr. Alvarez. The sound of the gavel was like a final cut, severing all of Isabel's hopes. She collapsed to the floor, screaming hysterically, "No! Michael is mine. You have no right to take him from me." Her screams echoed through the courtroom, but no one was moved. The strangers in the back benches whispered among themselves, their glances full of judgment. I looked at Mary and Joe. I saw them lower their heads and cover their faces as silent tears fell. They said nothing, but I knew their pain was no less than ours. I squeezed Alex's hand, giving him strength, letting him know his mother was still there. He turned to look at me, his eyes empty but filled with resolve. "Mom, I'll do everything to give Michael a good life," he murmured. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I know, son. We'll make it." The hearing ended and we walked out of the courtroom. The air outside felt lighter, but the pain still weighed on our shoulders. I saw Alex standing still in the sun, as if trying to gather his strength. Mrs. Rose, our neighbor, had brought Michael, and the boy ran straight into Alex's arms, his big eyes full of confusion. "Dad, are we going home now?" he asked in his clear little voice. Alex scooped him up, hugging him tightly against his chest, his voice choked. "Yes, son, we're going home." I stood beside them watching the scene, my heart both broken and comforted. Regardless of the truth of his blood, Michael was still Alex's son and my grandson. As we were leaving the courthouse, court officers were escorting Isabel out for disturbing the peace. She turned her head and screamed desperately, "Alex, you're going to pay for stealing my son from me!" Her voice was sharp, filled with hatred, but Alex didn't look back. He just held Michael's hand tighter and kept walking forward. Alex and I took Michael back to the house that was once a home for the three of them, and was now nothing but a pile of broken memories. The wooden door opened to reveal the traces of that fateful day. The withered rose petals scattered on the floor like fragments of dried memories. The folder with the car contract tossed in a corner of the table. The papers in disarray, just like our lives. I looked around and felt that this house was no longer the place I had known. A place once filled with Michael's laughter and the smell of family meals. Now it was just a scar that would never heal. Alex cleaned in silence, each movement slow, as if he were trying to pick up the pieces of himself. I said nothing. I just took Michael to the bathroom and helped him wash his face and clean up after a long day. "Grandma, the water's cool." Michael laughed as I splashed water on his curly hair. That innocent smile was the only thing keeping me going. I put him in clean pajamas and then went to the kitchen to make a simple meal. Chicken and rice, the dish Michael always loved. The smell of toasted rice mixed with herbs filled the house, but it couldn't lift the weight from my chest. Our first meal after everything was over was eaten in silence. Alex sat across from me, his gaze fixed on his plate, though I knew he wasn't really eating. Michael, however, ate without a care in the world, his eyes bright as he told me about a new game at school. And then he looked up and asked in his innocent voice, "Where's Mom? Why isn't she having dinner with us?" The question was like a dagger straight to the heart. Alex froze, his fork clattering onto the table with a sharp clack that broke the silence. I pulled Michael into a tight hug, forcing a smile. "Mom's busy, honey. Tomorrow you and I will go to the park, okay?" The boy nodded, his smile returning, but Alex's eyes remained empty, as if he had been dragged back into the nightmare. News about Isabel soon spread through the neighborhood. People whispered that she had been kicked out of her boarding house for not paying rent, that she was wandering from place to place. Some said they had seen her in the corner of a cheap diner, her clothes disheveled, her eyes vacant. I listened to it all with a pain mixed with anger. Pain because she was once my daughter-in-law, a part of this family. Anger because she had destroyed everything herself, leaving wounds in Alex and Michael that would never heal. One afternoon, as I was picking Michael up from school, I caught sight of a figure on the street corner. It was Isabel. She was wearing an old sweater, her hair was tangled, and her red-rimmed eyes were fixed on us. I squeezed Michael's hand, my heart pounding in my chest. Isabel took a step forward but stopped short when she saw Alex's car approaching. She turned, and her thin silhouette disappeared around the corner. Michael looked up at me and asked, "Grandma, doesn't that person look like my mom?" I gave him a stiff smile, stroking his hair. "I must have been mistaken, honey. Let's go home and have some tamales." But deep down, I knew it was Isabel, a mother who had lost everything, even the right to look at her son from a distance. That evening, as I was making dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Mary and Joe standing there, their faces tired, their eyes red. Mary took my hand, her voice choked. "Carol, we are so sorry. We never thought Isabel would do something like this. But please, you and Alex have to let us keep visiting and taking care of Michael." She was crying, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. Joe, standing behind her with his head down, said in a grave voice, "The boy is not to blame. Carol, he's our blood, even if Isabel was wrong." I looked at them, my heart torn between compassion and pain. I knew they were suffering too, that they had also lost a daughter in their own way. I invited them into the house where Alex was sitting on the rug playing with Michael. He looked up, his gaze cold but without hatred. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Mary repeated her plea, her voice trembling. "Alex, we just want to be near Michael. We're not defending Isabel, but the boy. He needs his grandparents' love." Alex was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on Michael, who was focused on building a Lego tower. Then he nodded, his tone soft but certain. "The boy needs love. If you're being sincere, then we have no reason to say no." Those words made Mary burst into tears. She hugged Joe as if a ray of hope had just been returned to them. With tear-filled eyes, Joe placed a bag of still warm tamales in my hands. "We bought these on the way. The boy loves them." I smiled, accepting the food, and I felt my heart warm up just a little. Despite everything that had happened, the love for Michael was still the bond that held us together. That night, for the first time after so many storms, the house was once again filled with Michael's crystal-clear laughter. He sat between Mary and Joe, excitedly telling them about his games at school. While they listened, their eyes shining with joy, Alex, sitting across from them, didn't say much, but I saw the corner of his mouth curve into a slight smile as he watched his son. I got up and brought a flan to the table, the boy's favorite dessert. "Grandma Carol makes the best flan in the world," Michael shouted, making everyone laugh. Seeing that scene, I felt a bit of peace return, however fragile. But deep in my heart, I couldn't forget the lost look in Isabel's eyes on the street corner. I thought about her, about the path she had chosen, and I felt a heavy weight. She had lost everything, her family, her love, even the son she claimed she couldn't live without. I looked at Mary and Joe, and I saw in their eyes the pain of losing their daughter, but also a sense of comfort and deep gratitude for being able to be near Michael. I knew that even though they were suffering, they would do anything to give the boy the love he needed. As I was clearing the table, Michael ran to me and wrapped his arms around my neck, whispering, "Grandma, I love you so much." His words were like a warm breath passing through my old heart. I hugged him tight, tears streaming down my cheeks, but I was smiling. "I love you too, Michael. Always." I looked at Alex, who was watching us silently, tenderness in his eyes, though they were still heavy with pain. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with the love we all felt for Michael, we would get through it. From everything we've been through, I want to leave you with this message. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers, but from those we trust the most, and it can tear a family apart. But in the rubble, I learned that true strength isn't in revenge, but in the love and resolve to protect the innocent. Michael is proof that children should not have to carry the burden of adults' mistakes. We can lose a lot, we can fall, but if we hold on to a heart that is capable of loving and protecting one another, the family will continue to exist, whole in a new way. And that is the most important thing. The story you've just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't tell it to judge, but in the hope that someone will hear it and stop to reflect. How many mothers are enduring silently within their own homes? I truly wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to confront everything to reclaim your own voice? I want to hear your opinion, because every story can become a candle that lights the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I'm sure that courage will lead us to better days. Right now on the end screen, I will leave 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.